Paul Young with his cover of Love of the Common People on Revenge of the 80s Radio. The track was originally released in 1982 and featured a trombone solo by the late Rico Rodriguez. Paul's commencing with the second leg of his North American tour with Midge Ure, and he's on with us now. Welcome to Revenge of the 80s Radio, Paul.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let's talk about the tour and your 2006 Good Thing album, Paul, but first I want to take a look back. Before you became a solo star, you were in a couple of promising bands, a Cool Cat, Street Band, and the Q-Tips.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They really seemed to shape your career a little bit later on.
Well, the cool Cats didn't really. I was only a bass player in that, and it was a local band, so it gets more mention than it actually should. But Street Band was the first band I was in because they wanted me as a singer, which is what I felt I wanted to do. And so they were looking for a singer anyway, and they got me in, and they were kind of English. Well, they had to make themselves a bit punky because the punk explosion had just happened. There were actually some really good players in the band, so we had to dumb it down a little bit and make our stuff a bit more rocky. And so I was with them for a while. They were big fans of bands like The Who and things like that, you know. And so we had that kind of harder edge to our sound. But also there's a slightly quirky edge because we were listening to Ian Dury and things like that. And then the Q-Tips came out of the remnants of Street Band because the guitar player had gone off to marry a German girl, and we needed the money, so we didn't cancel our shows while he had a honeymoon. We just turned up with another band, which was a soul band. We got a brass section in, and then we just played. And then we went back to doing the Street Band stuff. But in my mind, I was going, oh, I really enjoyed doing that soul stuff. So when Street Band came to its natural end, I said to the bass player and guitar player, I'd like to do that again. It's great, you know. So let's get a soul band together. And
Street Band did have a top 20.
A tough time, yeah. Oh, we did, yeah. The only single that we did was actually the B-side of our single. And, well, the only hit we had. But some wise-ass DJ in London flipped the single, just played the other side to see what was on it. And then he played it, and people were phoning up going, who's that? What is that? And it was a record called Toast that basically I was talking on it. So it's a very funny start for me as a singer. And it was something that was quite jocular. And at that time, we were being produced by Chaz Jankel, who was a member of Ian Dury's Blockheads and the producer. So because he heard that and it was right down his alley, and he said, oh, I love that. Why can't we do that? I said, well, you know, it wasn't really a song. I did it for one night at a gig, you know, just for a laugh. And but unfortunately, everyone thought we were like a comedy act, you know, so we never really found our core audience, as it were, and it just got really depressing. So that came to an end.
I guess that makes a lot of sense because when you guys put together the Q-Tips, you played to a lot of critical acclaim. Yeah,
we did. From the offset, you know, the players were all hard-working guys, and they knew how to enjoy themselves on stage and put on a good show. And obviously back then we hadn't made a record. Then we did make a record, but it wasn't really making us that great amount of money. So we just had a life on the road, and we got tighter and tighter and better. And then it ended up being one of the best live shows of that period of the early 80s. And people would come and see us. The same amount of people would come and see us play at university as bands like Madness that had a lot of hits. I mean, 6 or 7 hits. And yet we were filling the same places just by word of mouth.
Paul Young is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Paul is commencing a tour, the second leg of it, with Midge Ure across North America. He'll be on the West Coast set. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. What was the plan for you? When Columbia Records signed you to go solo shortly after the Q-Tips breakup, you were still new wave, but a bit less punkish, I suppose.
Yes, that's right. Well, with the Q-Tips, the band started to split down the middle with them. I felt we needed some more, some material that had more depth, and we needed to move away from just being a retro soul band. But the other half of the band weren't keen on the songs that we were trying out, my songs that I'd written with the keyboard player. And yet the songs they were turning up with, I thought they were very lightweight, lyrically, really. It was just songs about partying all night long. And, you know, there was no depth to it at all. So I got a little nest egg of songs that I thought, well, I'll work on those on my own at some other time. Then the Q-Tips came to the end of their contract with Chrysalis Records, and the manager came to me and said, I've got to tell you, you know, I'm shopping for the band, but a lot of record companies are only interested in you. So then I was at a crossroads and I had to decide what I was going to do. And I thought, well, hey, I'll take the solo deal. You know, Rod Stewart took a solo deal, but he was still in the Faces. But then the same thing happened. So I got a massive #1 hit, and then obviously the solo career took over. Really.
And the rest is history in that respect. But looking a little bit back to that, some artists or bands during the era saw some instant top 10 success virtually right off of their discoveries. Their first single went huge.
Yeah.
In some cases, it was a catalyst to greater things, but in other cases, it kind of led to their demise. Because the fact is, most say they were surprised and sometimes unprepared for that kind of success so quickly. You, on the other hand, did see that some success with the Toast song, obviously, and a lot of critical acclaim. You played with the big boys with the Q-Tips. How did that kind of success and work with the earlier bands help prep you for what was to become an internationally acclaimed, huge solo career?
Well, the great thing about it was I'd taken the keyboard player from the Q-Tips, and the manager of the Q-Tips only was the manager of the Q-Tips because he was my agent when I was in street band. So that's the only reason he looked after the band. So that's why he said, you know, that I'm only managing this band because you're in it. You know? So that's why I want to tell you that there are people talking about the solo deal. So I kept those same three people, which kept us more level-headed because we'd all gone up and down the motorways in tiny little vans and things like that and put up with all the hard stuff, but also learnt our craft along the way. So by the time I was doing my first tour, I already knew how to put on a good show, how to get around the stage, learnt a few microphone twirling tricks and things like that, you know, so I was a little bit more ready, I'd say, than the others.
I'm sure it helped. On your website, though, your bio referred to the first solo album you recorded as, quote, the one the Q-Tips should have made.
That was a quote that came from the record company. That's what they wanted me to do. Strange thing was, when I signed the solo deal, there was never any discussion with my record company about what kind of record we were going to make. So when we had our first meeting, and he said, right, we're going to assemble the best musicians and we're going to make the best soul album, the album that the Q-Tips should have made. I said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I've done that for 3 years and no one bought the records. I want to make something different. So and straight away, there was a look of shock on their face. And they would only let me in the studio to do 3 songs at a time. So we were very worried about what direction I was going to go in. And so that's how that quote came about, really.
Paul Young is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. We're going to talk about the tour with Midge Ure. That's happening as we speak. We have a lot more to talk about, too. Other projects and a solo album from 2016. All that straight ahead with Paul Young on Revenge of the 80s Radio. The Girl from Tennessee, that's from Los Pacaminos on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Los Pacaminos, one of Paul Young's many projects that he's done throughout his career. Paul, let's talk about the band.
Well, we started the band in 1992. So it's already been going for nearly 26 years. I'd reached the end of my contract with Sony, so we were going to look for another one, which meant I got some time on my hands. And I thought, well, I'm in no rush to record an album. So, and also I was getting a bit bored with being a pop star and stuff like that. And I thought, I need to pick up a guitar again, start playing. And I'd like to have a band with some friends. And I've been listening to a lot of Ry Cooder, and then I found Flappy Jimenez, the Texas Tornadoes. And I was going a long way down that route. I was starting to buy a lot of other Mexican stuff as well, just to get an understanding, really. I mean, I do love music, so when Ry Cooder does something, I think, what is that sound? Well, never really heard it before. And he'd still got R&B vocalists with really beautiful, soulful voices, but there was this undercurrent of something else going on. So I wanted to explore that, and I thought, this is very happy sounding music. I could do a little bit of that in my life, you know. And so I started the band in 92 with Jamie, who's still with me now. He's doing this tour. He's playing the guitar. And And I called up some other friends that had played with me or I'd written songs for them in the past and said, I want to start this band. And it's just going to be for fun, you know. I don't want to be the lead singer. I want to share it with other people. I suppose never thought this before, but kind of like Three Dog Night, you know, they could swap and change. So we did that, and I thought 2 years after, we would do it for a couple of years in between me finding writing songs and recording another album, and then I'll be off on the Paul Young tour. But as soon as I'd done that, I was straight back on the phone saying, I'm coming home, let's try and get some gigs in, let's do it again, it's fun. And that's the way it's been for 25 years. We started writing our own material. I'm exploring another genre of music, which is always something nice for a musician to do. And I'm adding strings to my bow, you know, playing a guitar, learning a Mexican instrument, writing songs within certain parameters, trying to stay sort of in the Tex-Mex frame. And I can write instrumentals as well, so which I can't do as Paul Young. So it fulfills other sides of music that I couldn't do solo.
Not to be constrained, though. You did say that you like to try out new forms of music and something different each time, pulling out the guitar again. You and some of your very talented friends formed a swing band project back in 2006. What attracted you at the time to the big band sound?
Well, Paul Anka had done a record, and the producer had given him songs, much more current songs, and put them in the swing mainframe. So I think the record company that did that album were German-based. And then they obviously thought, well, that was successful, we'll approach some other people. So they came to me and see if I wanted to do it. And I thought, yeah, I've always fancied doing that kind of music. Actually, there became a current, there were quite a few people. Tony Hadley did one as well. And I just thought I'd like to do that because I listened to a lot of swing and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. I'd say the album was about 70% successful. There's a few songs in there that really worked well, you know. And the band was amazing, and it's great to sing over the top of something that sounds that mighty. You know?
This all leads up to your 2016 solo album, Paul Young, Good Thing. It's your first in quite a while.
Arthur Baker came to me with the idea of putting singers with publishing houses. So he said we should do an album where we go to the people that own all of the East Memphis music catalogue, like the songs that Steve Cropper wrote for Otis and all this kind of thing. And he said, but let's try and find some songs that are lesser known, and we'll do an album of songs like that. So Arthur would come through town, and we just used to meet up and play stuff together and go, what do you think about this one? I found this one, I found that one. And so we cut the album, and up until that point, I've been thinking, I want to make another Paul Young album, but I've tried projects with this person and that person and other people. And I would think one or two songs sound pretty good, but I wouldn't want to have a whole album of material like that. So all that got put on the back burner, and I thought maybe until I decide what I'm supposed to be doing as Paul Young, 35 years after my first album, it might be an idea to get back to my roots. And that was the basic idea behind it.
And the fans were happy with it as well, because a lot of people are saying, hey, when's Paul Young going to put out a new album? Everybody else seems to be doing it.
Yeah. Well, that material that I recorded in bits and pieces, I assembled it all together into a little folder in my computer, and I played it back. And I thought, oh, that's a Paul Young album, because it's very hard for me to pin down exactly what my sound is, because as a solo artist, I'm free to chop and change, and each album I've made hasn't sounded like the one I made before, which makes it very difficult then to know exactly what style my album should be. And then I realised that a Paul Young album has always been an album of songs I've written, songs I've covered. Some are potential pop songs, and others would never be pop songs, but they're great songs. They're a little bit darker, got a little bit more depth in the lyric. So in the end, the Paul Young album is an album with a lot of variety, a lot of different music styles. And when I pulled all the projects together that I've done, that's exactly what I've got. Some stuff is very arranged, and some stuff is quite rocky, and some stuff is really, really trimmed back. So I think I've got a Paul Young album with all the material I've been recording. And in the early part of next year, I need to get all this material that's 80% done. I need to get that all finished, and then there should be another Paul Young album coming up.
A great artist can take a high-quality song and bring something new to it. When they cover it, they kind of make it their own. You've done that throughout your career. But what attracts you to a song that you want to record?
I get asked this a lot, and there's no set criteria. There's something that draws me to the song. You know, in the early days, we'd had friends, or not friends, but people that we knew in the business. They'd say, "I really think this is great for Paul," you know, and they'd offer the song up. And one particular songwriter was really calling my manager a lot and going, "Come on, get Paul to do a demo of it. It's going to work. It's fantastic." You know, my manager said to me, I said, "I don't think it's right for me." He said, "But maybe we're not right all the time. Maybe you'll do it, and we'll go, wow, that sounds fantastic. You never thought." And so it'd be good to explore material that you're not drawn to at first, because that might be another place to look the next time you want to make an album. So we did the song. I took it to my manager. He went, "No, you're right. It's crap." So it never came out. And so it's just that's the thing. I don't know what it is. I hear stuff, and then I try it basically, and then some songs I really start to get into, and it feels really comfortable after a while. And other songs it doesn't get any more comfortable. It just stays being awkward, and I can't fit my style into it. And so I don't do that song, basically.
Paul Young is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio, and we're going to talk about the tour with Midge Ure. It's happening throughout North America. The second leg is going on. But I understand, at least this is what I read, that you developed into some kind of whiz in the kitchen. How did that come about, Paul?
Well, the keyboard player that was in the Q-Tips and went on to the solo career with me, his hobby was cooking. And we used to go around his house, but I was younger then, you know, and I wasn't really that interested in it. And me and the trumpet player got a date with a couple of hot girls. And we said, "Oh, we don't want to come round for dinner now." He said, "You're going to come round for dinner, because I've been working on it all weekend. I've been marinating the food," you know. He was doing an Indian meal for us. So we went, "All right, well, we'll have that. And then we're going to go and see these girls." He said, "You won't be going anywhere." And he was right. We had so much food that we just curled up in front of his fire. I said, "What about the girls?" And they said, "Oh, it doesn't matter, leave them." So,
inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration. So then we would go out on the road, you know, and I remember we went down to New Orleans, and he and the keyboard player were going, "This is what I've been waiting for on this whole tour. Let's get down here and get some good food," you know. And so when we got there, the restaurant that we wanted to get into, which was K. Paul's, we couldn't get in because he was about the hottest chef at that time in the mid-'80s. And so we had to eat somewhere else, but then we came out of there and walked to his restaurant and bought the cookery book, and then that was it for me. I took that home and started doing this food, and everyone that came around our house went, "I've never had anything like that before," because Cajun food is very unexplored in the UK, even now. So I'm still doing stuff from that first book that I bought, and people go, "I've never tasted anything like that. It's incredible," you know. So, and then I got into other things, of course, Mexican food I love, Italian food, but yeah, it's a good hobby.
Bringing that culinary culture to the rest of the world. Paul Young is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. As for the U.S. tour this year, Midge Ure has been on with us several times, and most recently during the first portion of your tour. And he said that he enjoys sharing the bill with you. Interestingly, though, you both worked on the Band-Aid Do You Know It's Christmas song, shared the stage during many milestone musical events, not the least of which being Live Aid, yet you both never toured together before this year.
Yeah, that's right, because, well, I mean, most people tend to tour on their own, but in these days now, they've kind of reinvented the package tour of the 60s. So you used to go and see shows in the 60s, and you've got the Small Faces, Dusty Springfield, all these people, and the headlining that would be the Rolling Stones. I mean, there were so many on there, none of them did much more than 20 minutes. But and then now shows got much bigger. Now we're used to bands touring on their own, but there's been a resurgence of these kind of tours where there's 4 or 5 bands on the same stage. But I don't think there's been many kind of double-ups like this. So basically we do an hour each, and then we come on together at the end and do something. I've never really done it with Midge, because I think with the stuff he's done with Ultravox and Rich Kids and things like that, it was very electronic, and it was much less. We didn't think that our audience, say Midge's audience, wouldn't like my stuff very much, and vice versa. But then we've discovered that people are just so happy to hear this stuff again. They accept it all. And also, when people get older, they're less sort of discerning. It doesn't really matter. I think back then people were very true. A fan was a fan, and they would stick by you, and they wouldn't like anybody else. But the older you get, the less you think like that. So generally, I mean, it's been really, really good. I mean, sometimes people will turn up with armfuls of Ultravox, and I stand there with my arms folded, body signing them all. But then sometimes it works the other way as well. So it really doesn't matter.
Paul Young with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. So far, what were some of the highlights, in your opinion, of this year's live performances stateside?
Well, I'm really enjoying the West Coast, because we did the East Coast, and actually New York's good fun. We had some good ones, played the Highline Ballroom, and also the one on Long Island. That's great too. But what we've enjoyed here is we had a good one. We started in Vancouver. That was a really good one. The one we played last night, actually, which was great, was in San Juan Capistrano, and it was rammed, and we were really worried because it's Labor Day weekend. But I was very pleased with the turnout last night, and there were people up and dancing from the beginning. But I think that's possibly one of my favourite ones.
Paul Young is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Paul, you did mention a little bit about a potential solo album, but I do understand you have a live album coming out later this year.
Yeah, that's right. With Los Pacaminos, we recorded it a little while ago now, but there's been a very busy year for me, and it's now complete. The final touches to the artwork, and the Los Pacaminos live album comes out in November. So, and that coincides with when I get to the end of this tour, I'm going back to the UK, and I'm doing a No Parlay tour, which is doing the whole of the first album because it's 35 years old this year. Then in November, the Pacaminos go on the road. And so that's why we're tying in the Pacaminos tour with an album release. And then the early part of next year, yes, I'll be doing what we were talking about, which was assembling all the material I've been working on.
Thanks again, Paul Young, for being with us on Revenge of the 80s Radio today. Let's play a track from your 2016 album, Good Thing. Back for a taste of your love on Revenge of the 80s Radio.